Well, Queens, welcome to another edition of my client interview series. And I have Aga with me today, and Aga's going to share openly and honestly, you know what word I'm trying to use.
Honestly, yeah.
Honestly, thank you. Very simple word that I seem to say today. Her experience with coaching and where she was, where she's at now. So, Aga, welcome to the Body Love Binge.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody.
Yay. So, 10 quick fire questions. I'll try and be kind, shall I?
Yes, please.
All right, let's go. Number one, if you could only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Oh, great one. Oh, another one, similar vibe. If you could only listen to one song, which would be annoying, not gonna lie, for the rest of your life, what one would it be?
Uh, I have no clue.
Also a good answer. If you could have a superpower for a day, what would you choose?
Ooh, interesting. Um, Maybe something to give people ability to be very clear about what they feel and how they think. So
Oh,
the gift of giving people clarity,
nice. Love that one. Not heard that one before.
authentic.
Yes. And we need more difference. So if everyone has a superpower, most people will be flying, which is fine.
It's an interesting one as well. It was on my probably top three.
Yeah, I think it is. And mine would be, because obviously making this about me, because I think I need to share, to be able to click your fingers and just be in a different country.
That would be nice as well, sometimes. Yeah.
Cool. All right, number four, what's the most spontaneous thing you've ever done?
Most spontaneous thing. Well, probably I'm not the most spontaneous person ever, but I think back in the day, um, at the time, my boyfriend convinced me that we should go to States and just find job and have an adventure in States. So we did. Was extremely fun. So yeah, that was probably one of
Oh,
the most spontaneous things.
how long did you stay there for?
For the whole kind of summertime, so 3 months or something like that.
And what state did you go to? Or did you travel?
The first time I went to New Hampshire, but then we kind of traveled around a bit.
Nice. Love that. Oh, I'm intrigued at your answer to this because you're very analytical. So, if you were going to a desert island and you had to take three things,
Oh
what would
my
they
God.
be?
A knife, something to set a fire,
Smart.
and probably a bunch of podcasts to listen to.
Good idea. Again, I feel like I want to share. I would take a knife also, because that makes sense. Also, something to start a fire. And I would take a book on how to survive on a desert island. There must be
Yes,
one.
as well. There's plenty for sure.
There you go. All right, number six. Do you have a favorite childhood memory that brings a smile to your face when you think about it?
Retrospectively, yes, but apparently when I was a child and probably still now, I was really afraid of spiders. So every time there would be even like a small black dot on the wall, there would be a panic. And I would be all in tears crying because there's perhaps a spider on the wall. So looking at it retrospectively, yeah, makes me laugh.
Oh, that's cute. And it's so common that people are afraid of spiders. Do you think that's just conditioning or what?
Well, they are quite ugly and misunderstood creatures, so perhaps.
And they're quick as well.
True. And
You
some
don't.
of them can jump.
Yeah, yeah. It might not just be conditioning then. Okay. Oh, what's the funniest or most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
That happened to me, or I have done many embarrassing things.
Oh, either,
Not
whichever comes
sure.
to your mind.
I want to share here. Um, well, I don't know which one is the most embarrassing ones. But yeah, I often think of myself, I have not much shame when it comes to some things doing in public. So there might be a lot of things that people know about, but I would prefer not to share.
That's fine. I'll give let's replace that one with flats or heels.
Always flats.
Yeah, same. Number 8, sunset or sunrise?
Sunrise, probably.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
And number 10, I'm going to ask you a 10.5, a 10 point A, B, whatever. But number 10, if you can master a musical instrument overnight, what would it be?
Oh, Lord. I like the sound of piano, so probably piano would be a good instrument.
Yeah, sounds beautiful. And then the 10.5 or the 10 point A, so people know a bit about you, like what's your name if you want to share your full name, where do you live, and what do you do? There's a job.
Oh, so my name is Aga, and I currently live in Spain, Barcelona, which is yeah, a place where I live for the past 1.5 years. So it's quite new to me as well.
Mhm.
And for my job, I do agile coaching. So I work with mostly IT companies, helping the teams to get better at what they do and helping sort some of the processes that organizations have.
Nice. So think back to what is it now, 4 months ago, maybe a bit longer,
Probably longer. Yeah.
5 months ago, when we first met. What were you struggling with? Why did you explore coaching back then?
What I was struggling with was primarily the body image issues, which I think over the course of coaching, I've analyzed it back that were kind of a side effect of my eating disorder, which I experienced when I was a teenager. I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa back then. Um, and I think for me, it was never really about getting smaller or trying to lose the weight. I was just trying to disappear and escape my situation at home. And somehow this feel of being fat, feeling fat, hating my body was always with me basically for the past, I don't know how long.
Yeah. And you didn't want that anymore?
Nope.
No. Had you tried anything before um to help you with letting go of that fear of fatness or feeling fat?
Yes, so I think my first experience was with the kind of traditional therapy. I went to some therapists, which were very useful at that time, perhaps where I was with some of the kind of family related stuff.
Mm.
Um, I changed therapists several times, and all of them kind of gave me the signal that they are not able to help me anymore when it came to the body image issues or this relationship with body image, self-sabotage, shame, and the eating disorder. So then I started to explore some other options that could perhaps help me. And I came across this webinar, which was talking about eating disorder, body dysmorphia, body image. And you were one of the people speaking during this webinar. And that's how I reached out to you.
Yeah, I remember now it was from a webinar. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so people can relate to where you were. What was your day-to-day life like, perhaps internally in your mind,
Mhm.
or maybe even in the outside world? Did it affect you, like how you felt towards yourself and about your body?
Yes. So I had very much the feeling of being fat. So every time I passed by a mirror or somewhere where I could see my reflection, I would look at myself and the kind of feeling of hate would just grow. I felt fat. Sometimes I had days where I would feel fat and think I look fat. Some other days I would feel fat but think I don't look fat. I would also have this kind of thoughts of, for example, um, while going out for dinner or eating something, I would be like, oh, that's not worth the calories. Or when I knew I had to go eat out to a restaurant, I would try to save my day to have this meal later on in the day, so I wouldn't be eating lunch. So I think quite commonly I would skip some meals or completely ignore the kind of hunger clues. And I would just try to postpone my eating. Mm, I don't think I kind of proactively restricted any groups of foods or anything. It was more like those little thoughts, for example, oh, you should be eating more protein, or you should be eating more of this. Um, and sometimes on occasion as well, this feeling of shame and guilt. For example, when I had a cookie or when I had chocolate, I would be then going into this self-sabotaging thoughts like, oh, why did you eat it? You shouldn't be eating it. Um, but the biggest manifestation I think it had on my body image, and I could literally be crying and just like literally hating my body.
Yeah, I remember the feeling. And did anyone, your loved ones around you, know that you were struggling?
Yes, so my long-term partner, he always knew about this. But apart from that, I don't believe anybody, well, the therapists I went to, and also in the past, I was working with the personal trainer and nutritionist, and this person also knew.
Yeah.
And when it got really bad, it was actually thanks to them that I started to reach out for help with the therapist.
Right, because it can be a very secretive, I want to say illness. I guess labels help sometimes with the severity of what's going on, but it's a very isolating
Yes,
place to be, isn't it? Because there's a lot of shame around how you feel and what you do. And when we feel alone, we isolate ourselves, and it makes that kind of everything feel worse than it is as well.
that's true.
Yeah. So when we met and we obviously had the consultation call, how did you feel? And obviously continued to be as honest as possible throughout this entire conversation. How did you feel about starting coaching? I mean, obviously there's something that was positive because you paid and signed up and here we are. But were they any kind of what if this doesn't work for me? Any kind of doubts that you had?
I think I've experienced like coaching before, like coaching in a workplace. So I knew what is the power of coaching.
Mm.
Somehow, though, I never realized there are some specialized coaches that can also help you, with body image or eating disorder. So from this perspective, I didn't have any doubts. And I think also it was kind of the alignment of different stars that I was also ready to receive coaching, which I think it's quite important that people might not realize that if you're not ready for coaching, the coach cannot do it for you. There's a lot of work that you have to be doing yourself, and the coach can only help you on the journey.
Yeah.
So I think it was combination of those little factors that by the end of the day um, made me sign up
Yeah.
and hope for the best.
Yeah, because you don't know 100%, right? You can listen to me saying all these things, like I can get you where you want to be. Obviously, you do the work, I can't do it. But I had doubt when I went into coaching, but there was just something within me that was like, right, I'm going to pay this money. And it was a lot for me. And I had to put it on my credit card. And I was like, I know what it's like not to do something. So I may as well do something and just see what happens. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was the biggest thing you've learned throughout this process, would you say?
I think for me personally, like the moment that was really eye-opening was when I went through this program and then we had some coaching sessions as well. And it was all about like our values, our limiting beliefs, and how our values drive our behaviors. And there was one of this exercising sheet that I've been filling in, filling in, filling in. And there was like one last question at the bottom asking, oh, like, What purpose do you think those values are
Mm.
serving in your life? And then I find myself writing, well, they are very good values if I want to be miserable throughout my whole life and just live in a misery. And I remember part of me was like laughing and part of me was crying. And that was very eye-opening moment that actually all my behaviors were driven from those weird values that maybe I've learned in the past at home. And basically my comfort zone was misery. So anything that was outside of misery was scary and felt out of control and felt like, oh, everybody else has it, but I cannot have it because it's somehow not me.
Yes, so crucial that we look at values. And like you say, until you're asked those questions like, how are your current values serving you? And we actually go deep and are like, oh, yeah, they're not serving me, but for some reason, I'm continuing to live in alignment with those values. So, do you mind sharing two examples of what your previous values were compared to two examples of what you value and live by now?
So I think one or well, many of those values that I had were very transactional or very um, somehow work related.
Mm.
So progressing in like, progressing with your growth at work, which I think drove quite a lot of my action being quite transactional. And at the same time, limiting my personality to my work life. So if something goes wrong with my work life, my whole life would be then falling into pieces because I identified myself too much with my work. And over the time, I started to replace some of those values. So, for example, one that I try to act by now is connectivity. So, instead of having like transactional connections, I try to build more meaningful connection with people. But also, I think for me, it's quite important to build a connection with myself
Mm.
because part of what I've discovered was that I'm living too much in my head and not in my body. So now I'm trying to connect the body with my brains
Yeah.
to make it complete. And I also try to work on what does it mean to be worthy for myself. So what is worthiness for me? And try to dissociate it from my work situation, for example. So not to define myself by my work.
Mm. Would you say a lot of your growth has been from you, first of all, getting clarity on where you were, where you want to be, where you want to go, and then acting as if, because it's a funny one, because it's like fake it till you make it, which doesn't feel true. Well, then action needs to come before the feeling changes. Would you say that benefited you, like acting as if you were worthy, acting as if you were connected to others? Was that something that supported you?
Yes, and also thinking, for example, um, well, if that's my value, how would I be acting differently?
Mm.
Or what would I do differently to kind of support this value and me going in that direction?
Yeah, action is really crucial. Like you said at the beginning, there's a lot of inner work and action work needed on this journey, and it can bring up a lot because I don't, and we're not going to delve into it too far, but a lot came up for you around childhood and why
Yeah,
misery was your comfort zone, and that was a lot to kind of see like head on, like in your face, like, oh wow, that's why.
yeah.
Yeah. So next question I have for you is, oh yeah, how is your relationship now with food and with your body? So you can either kind of merge them together or you can do one and then the other so people
Mm.
can see where you're at now.
So I think already from like the very beginning of the coaching, I started to shift towards more intuitive eating.
Mm.
So I actually try to respect how I feel physically. Like if it was hunger, I try to eat rather than postponing it for some imaginary reason.
Yeah.
And really remove this labeling of like, oh, it's not worth the calories or this or that. So for example, if I eat chocolate now, I don't feel guilty or I don't feel shame. So that's really good. In relationship to my body, I think I managed to get to a place where I feel moderately neutral
Mm.
about it. So, for example, I haven't felt fat for many months, which is a success for me because in past I would feel fat every day
Mm.
or the whole day or every other day or every time I pass the mirror. So now I'm able to look in the mirror without this judgment and without criticizing my body for what it is and try to appreciate my body more for what it's doing for me or what it can do for me. I think also quite powerful um, realization was I think we were in one of the group coaching calls and one of the ladies mentioned this podcast where this other therapist lady is talking about her client struggling with the body image issues and this for many years and all of a sudden she got sick and she died like this
Mm.
over the period, a short period of time, which was also for me like a bit of a wake up call, if you know what I mean. It's like it can happen to anybody, right? So if we don't do anything about it now, tomorrow might be too late.
Yeah. And it is seeing the bigger picture, isn't it? And the perspective of life. Like looking back on our deathbeds, which is when we're going to be, let's say, 120 years old, ready to pass, and we look back, we don't want to regret not loving who we are and not living fully. But
Mm,
that would happen if we didn't do something to change the way we feel stuck or how unhappy we are. So I remember that call actually. So sad. The person was in therapy for body image coaching. Like
mm.
the big deal was, and we all understand how this feels, like I feel fat, I'm ashamed of my body, and then her life's gone.
Yeah.
And I would want for her to be free in her body and to live and enjoy life because, like you say, we never know how long we've got. So I think that's worth speaking to. How quickly did you see shifts? I know it's a journey and it kind of, it's a never ending journey of personal development either way. But was it quick for you? Was it a slow burner? Everyone's different. I'm just curious how you experienced it.
Well, definitely the first few weeks were difficult because as I went through the program and kind of doing quite a lot of introspection, and facing some of the childhood scenarios, this was definitely not easy. But I think over the course of few weeks, I started to notice that, oh, actually, I don't feel fat, or I haven't felt fat for a week, or something like this. Mm, so I think it took good several weeks to kick in to start seeing like those little changes
Mm.
and myself to mark the positive step on this journey.
Yeah. What was the hardest part about your journey?
I think the hardest part, and it's still work in progress, I think it is around the body image because the body image can have really detrimental impact on your life. So not only on the kind of social life, but also on your partnership with your loved ones. So that's an important one for me, but also quite a difficult one. Um, and I think also like spending those hours going through the program and trying to introspect and analyze like what happened or what does it mean. That was very difficult because I've been skilled for many years just to dissociate from all of this and never go to it. And my default answer to everything would be, I don't know.
Mm.
So if you ask me anything like, oh, so where do you think it's coming from? Or like, how do you feel about it? I would be like, I don't know. So it really forced me to know
Yeah.
and to face some of those things and understand better where it's all coming from. And yeah, so that was difficult. And I think difficult part was also realization, which previously I didn't realize. So previously, and also when I was in a therapy, I thought my eating disorder started as a consequence of seeing people dieting, seeing people wanting to be skinny. My mother was always experiencing eating disorder. She was always on a diet. I grew up in the times where there was an explosion of dieting culture. Um, so in the past, I thought that was my main driver to, to be skinny, or that was the reason why the eating disorder developed. But over this course of coaching, I actually realized that was not the root cause. The root cause was I wanted to disappear. And that was relatively easy way of
Yeah.
disappearing.
Yeah. It's always about the root cause. And we only find out, like you said, when you're willing to meet yourself with brutal honesty and be willing to dive into the questions that either you're asking yourself or they're on the worksheet and they're asking you. But it's having to dive deep and then finding out what comes up when you ask those questions to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your favorite part or the high of your journey, however you want to describe it?
Well, definitely all the coaching calls and also the group coaching call. That was something that was for me also eye-opening, because I spent so many years in like shadow of this eating disorder without talking to anybody about it. And there you go on a kind of group coaching call and you see many people presenting with the same feelings and having similar stories. And then you really feel like, oh my God, I'm really not alone in this. I'm not crazy. People really experience this. This really exists. Like, this feeling of self-sabotaging, feeling of shame when you eat something. This really exists. So it was very important for me to kind of have this group scenario where I could validate as well that it's not my imagination. This really exists.
Yeah. And which, of course, you know, but to share with the listeners, you're still a part of because with one-to-one coaching, you have lifetime access to the group and the group coaching within that. And I think, I'm so happy that I offer that because there might be a time where you want to, or you might want to join every call, or you might have a question, and to be surrounded by women who are kind of on different parts of the journey, some fully recovered, some at the beginning, some in the middle. It just really helps us to stay in the work and remember how far we've come as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you would be someone who enjoyed a group, like a group type of setting?
I mean, I never thought about it, to be fair. And I personally don't have any problem with a group setting, but I know some other people might have more restrictions or feel more shy,
Yeah.
probably because of the type of work I'm doing. I'm often exposed into group setting. So it's really depending on the personality, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And with the investment, do you feel like the investment was worth your time? Obviously, the time to go for the modules, all the inner work, the calls, with what you've got out. So I guess in your language, perhaps the ROI, the return of investment, was that worth it to you?
For me, it was definitely worth it. And I often regret that I discovered so late. I
Mm.
don't know how come I didn't encounter it earlier on in my life, but perhaps, yeah, the universe aligned at that time.
Exactly. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, and you were back then too. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I guess I don't know why I feel weird asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you recommend me to help others struggling with food and body struggles?
Yeah, of course. I would definitely recommend you. I actually shared with some people I knew that potentially struggle with similar feelings, I shared your resources as well. So I yeah, I would highly recommend you.
Thank you. And how has coaching changed your life? So outside of, if it has, outside of the stuff you came to coaching for, has it changed your life in other ways as well?
I think I'm trying to be in general more mindful in my life, if that
Mm.
makes sense. I'm trying to search more connections with people, more meaningful connections. I try to search more connections within myself and learn more about myself. I also find myself needing more me time than I did before. So I try to experiment with like little meditation sessions or really doing those gentle exercises like somatic yoga stretches, which in past I would be like,
Mm.
well, it's not high impact. Why do I need it?
Yes.
So I try to drive those little changes in my life as well. Um, as I said before, I do try to eat more intuitively. So, for example, even if I know I'm going for a dinner, I wouldn't skip the lunch because of that. So, hopefully, step by step, it's all getting in the right direction.
Yes. How would you describe me in 3 words? Don't hold back.
In 3 words, okay. I would describe you as warmth.
Mm.
You're like a ball of nice, fuzzy, warmness. I don't know.
Love that.
You're very authentic and you have lived experience, which I think is very important in this scenario. And you're also very to the point, which probably this is why you find it very easy to live in Netherlands.
Yes, they're very direct. I've probably learned from them, to be honest. Thank you, Aga. And so what advice would you give? So let's say someone's listening to this and
Mm.
they really resonate with where you were at. Obviously, they're not where you are yet. If you could give them like 3 pieces of advice or 3 things to do in terms of action or whatever it may be, what 3 things would you choose?
I think I would say there's so many resources currently out there, such as, for example, your podcast, other podcasts related to the subject, that even if you don't feel ready, at least give it a try. Listen what they are talking about. What are some small tips you can implement in your life? Because I mean, in past I didn't know this existed, and I was really shocked to discover how much of stuff is there.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you can make your life slightly easier by even listening to those podcasts and trying to get inspiration from those people.
Mm.
I think if you're ready, I would recommend to explore whether it's coaching or more traditional therapy. However, in my experience, I would suggest if you go for more traditional therapy, do select the therapists that have experience with eating disorder. It seems not to be very common type of training. So be mindful to search for the right person and explore coaching opportunities. There's many coaches who give consultation calls just to check if you're a good fit or if you're ready for coaching. And I would say don't wait.
Yeah. If not now, when? Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, Aga, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, this is like super turbocharged the conversation. We're both direct. We've got direct to the answers, direct to the questions. Is there anything you want to share with our listeners about anything? And you don't have to, of course. I'm just curious, opening it up to any conversation you want to go into.
Yeah, I think the biggest kind of learning from for me personally was you're not alone out there in this, and it doesn't have to be something that you have to go through in the shadow or in the shame. And often that's how I felt myself about this. So really maybe that's the reason why I never talked to anybody about it, because I thought it's either in my head or it's not a big deal and other people can move in their life way easier. So maybe there's something wrong with me.
Mm.
So for this reason, if any of you listeners are in a situation where you feel like you might have some eating disorder related behaviors, or perhaps you don't feel great in your body, try to search for information and try to reach out to people. Because yeah, as I said, for me, it was also important to know that there are other people out there with these feelings, and it's not only me.
Yeah. I have one last question for you that's just randomly came to me. What's the best question you've ever asked yourself?
I think something around like, why do I need this? So, for example, if I find myself doing something or acting on some value or some behavior, I trying to ask like, why do I need this? Does it serve me something specific, or is this something that I've learned in the past or I've been conditioned to know? And try to analyze it a bit better and understand like, do I need it or do I don't need it? And I can move on.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, thank you, Aga, for sharing your story. It's going to help so many people. I always say your story has the key to unlock someone else's change, the way you speak, your experience, the way you deliver what you want to say. So truly thank you for coming on and sharing your experience.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. All right, listeners, if you have any questions for Aga, can they contact you somehow? Would you prefer not to? Either is fine, because they can contact me anytime, of course.
Yeah, sure. You can contact me on Instagram. We can add my Instagram into the page.
Awesome. I will do that. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Aga, and much love to our listeners, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.